Hello, so I've not made a video for several months now. Been kind of difficult with lockdown and winter to find things to do. So I am actually out on the road. I'm just about to go over to the Isle of Mull for a few days to do a bit of filming over there and some visits for the travel guides. Once again, I'm not going to be doing videos about obvious things like Duart Castle or Tobermory. I'm going to try and pick out some of the less obvious little places you could visit on Mull. But I'm not on Mull yet. That is Mull over there, the other side of the water. That's the sound of Mull. What I am is in Morvern, and I'm just north of the ferry terminal at Lochaline. That's the wee ferry that you can catch over to Fishnish on Mull. And the advantage of that ferry is you don't have to pre-book it. You just turn up 10 minutes before the ferry is due to sail, and it's first come, first served. But what I am doing is taking you up at the moment to this thing called the Clachnaquis, which is the boundary stone in Gaelic translation. It's also known as the wishing stone, and there's a legend about the wishing stone that I shall try to explain. And the legend goes along this line that you could get your wishes granted here, but in order to get your wish granted, you had to fill your mouth with water from a stream. Now, there isn't any stream that's immediately nearby. I don't know from the legend where that stream would be, but there's plenty of water around about. So you'd fill your mouth with water. Then you would come to the Clachnaquis. Let me turn this camera around to show you. You would come to this stone, and your idea was that with your mouth full of water, you would come along here, and to get your wishes granted, you had to pass through this hole, which is a very big hole, but you had to pass through it without your hands touching the sides of the stone. And that's not very easy. I've tried, and if you can imagine, that's quite a big step. So you need to have a really good sense of, see, I've broken my wish already, I've already touched the side of it. You have to pass through here without touching the side of the stone. I've just lost my wish because I've touched the side of the stone. And you have to do that 3 times, one side to the other. Now, quite a tricky thing to do. Anyway, I'm going to jump down here because there's more to this stone. I really don't know how anyone could ever get a wish granted, because that is very difficult to do. It's a big step. If you got your wish granted here, you must have had very long legs, because doing that without touching the sides, very difficult. But the other interesting side of the story with this cairn, it's actually a lava flow that formed this pass through when the volcanoes were erupting and all the rest of it. And this is what's left of the intrusion of the lava. And it's called the boundary stone because it was meant to be a boundary. There's 2 legends anyway. One was a boundary between the Picts and the Scots, but it was also more likely a boundary stone between 2 church parishes, one in the north at Drimmen and the other one down at Lochaline. But what we do know for sure is there's all these wee cairns round about here, and this comes from a local tradition that people taking funeral processions coming up from Lochaline, travelling up to Drimmen, it's about halfway. The boundary stone's about halfway up, so they would stop here and they would build a little cairn here to mark the dead that are going to the burials up at the next church, at the burial ground up there. Now, if you do visit here, I would have to ask you not to put any extra stones up here. You're very specifically asked by the locals not to add any stones to these cairns, because obviously they want to keep it original and authentic and a mark of respect to their own dead. So please don't do that. What I would say, if you are coming and you're coming up to the Lochaline ferry, if you arrive a bit early for the ferry and you've got a bit of time on your hands, it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to drive up here. There's a nice little car park that you can leave your car at, and then it's just a short walk up a very quiet road. And it's also a really nice road to drive because you've got all this lovely deciduous forest round about, and it gives you a feel for what the landscape around about here would have been like before sheep farming and big hunting estates came along and deforested much of the land. So, Clachnaquis, it's a nice wee place to visit, something to do if you've got a bit of time to kill before taking the ferry over to Mull. So yesterday Logan and I went over to Staffa, which is one of the must-see things when you come to Mull, well worth doing. And I'll put some pictures in to show you that. I don't want to dwell on Staffa because it's a very mainstream tourist attraction. But when I went to Staffa, it's a 1 hour journey to sail to Staffa. and it's quite open seas. You're heading out overseas over that direction. And I'm not overly prone to seasickness, but I was getting a bit queasy on the way there, and I thought I need to give folk some alternative to see the fantastic Basalt Columns that Staffa's famous for, but without getting quite so seasick. And this is a good alternative. Well, I say it's a good alternative. It is by no way, I'm never going to pretend that this is as spectacular as Fingal's Cave on Staffa, or anything else on Staffa in terms of the geology. But it's a close second, and this is on Ulva, which is just a wee 1 minute ferry ride from the mainland of Mull. It's only £6 for the ferry, whereas going to Staffa will cost you £30 to £35. But as I say, it's a £6 ferry ride, £3 for children, and it's a 1 minute journey, so you're really not going to get seasick on that. And then you've got a walk of about 45 minutes to 60 minutes, a bit boggy in places, around the south corner of Ulva, and you come to this, which is, as I say, it's kind of a poor man's version of Staffa. Basalt Columns, nothing like spectacular, but a good alternative. So that's a wee tip for you if you're prone to seasickness and you want to have the exercise. Same amount of time it will involve you, as I say, 1 minute on the ferry, a 1 hour walk, then you come to this, and then you can walk back and you can get a coffee at the Boathouse Cafe on Ulva. Except there's no ferry on a Saturday. That's a really important thing to remember. No ferry on a Saturday. But wee tip there from Seasick, Scotland. Oh, just pan round and let you see what the rest of the landscape's like. This is a wee appendage to our visit to Ulva, because when you're over in Ulva, when you're sailing across, you'll see this quite spectacular waterfall on the mainland of Mull behind you. And the waterfall is called Eas Fors, which is the Gaelic for waterfall is Eas, and the Norse word for waterfall is Fors, so it's like waterfall if you translate it literally. And if you come from Ulva ferry and you drive up the road, not very far, only about 5 minutes up the road, there's a lay-by. It's usually got a horse box in it. You can park your car there, walk a little bit further north up the road, and you'll see a path that goes down to your left onto the beach. And then you've got a tricky walk along the beach, but it's well worth it. It takes maybe 15 minutes or so to walk along the beach, but if you do, you will come to this waterfall. Now, you can reach the waterfall, the road goes along the top, and you can actually park up on the road and walk down, but you don't really appreciate the waterfall from the roadside. You really have to come down to the shoreline to really appreciate this waterfall. I think this is every bit as good as the Kilt Rock and the Mill Falls on Skye. The pool's deep enough. If you are crazy and had a very good wetsuit, you might even want to go for a wee swim down there. I personally don't, because this is April and it's just way too cold for that. But yes, Eas Fors, relatively easy access, bit of rock to negotiate, only if you're nimble-footed. But yes, 15 minutes out of your time, well worth a visit. I thought I would just throw this quickly into the video because it's so easy to access when you're travelling from Tobermory, to Dervaig. You can see a car maybe coming down the hill. Just before you drop down the hill into Dervaig's just over this hill behind me here. There's a big lay-by on your right hand side, and it's got one of those signposts that picks out the landmarks on the horizon. And just a really short walk from that, 300 metres along, a bit of a farm track, you come to these stones, the Kilmore Standing Stones. So there's two large sandstones here, about 8 foot tall, two upright I should say. There's two which are now recumbent, which may have fallen over. There may have been some alignment with them, I don't know, or if it's like the recumbent stones perhaps that you find in Aberdeenshire, which tended to be, they think, for funeral cremations or sacrificial standing stones. Nobody really knows. But very easy to access standing stones, so worth a mention. As I say, it's a 5-minute walk, or if you run, you can do it in a minute, as I have just done. Very easy to access. As I say, cars, just driving past there, you can maybe see our car in the car park there off in the background. And yeah, it's quite a nice setting. It used to be surrounded by woods, and it was much more atmospheric and moody in those days. The forestry has all been chopped down quite recently, so the standing stones are now exposed, much easier to see from the road, but they lack a wee bit of that dark, shady, moody, spooky atmosphere that they used to have. It was quite a haunting place to come into in the old days. Now, with the trees gone, it feels much more exposed. But as I say, you get a much better impression of how the stones sit in the environment. So, worth a stop. Mull is, amongst other things, famous for its seafood, the quality of its seafood, and they do have very good mussels here. But if you know where to look, you can also find wild oysters. Now, we've just been here looking for only about 5 or so minutes on this beach. We found some lovely big boys like this. Now, don't worry, I am not going to eat this. We've found quite a few, but I don't think we've found enough to really start having a wee forage here. But that's the biggest boy we've found. We've also got some little baby ones. And there's at least another 4 or 5 that I've found just in the same little area. Really encouraging, because I've never found this many oysters so easily on the beach for quite a while now. I'm going to put them all back. I wouldn't for a moment suggest that you could come here and have a foraging feast, but if I put them all back and maybe come back in another 10-15 years, maybe with a bit of good luck there will be enough. It's very encouraging, and I'm going to keep this beach a secret because, well, one thing, I like oysters, and I just think it would be a shame if too many folk came here and started eating the oysters. So yeah, I'm going to keep this one a secret, sorry.